So you need to come through and get your Merbau piece. From here, you need to go through and grab a 20mm M6 bolt hex head. Now the hex head on the one I'm using is a 10mm hex head, which says right there, but that doesn't matter too much because you can make it work with whichever one you have access to. I do recommend the 20mm because you could go 25, anything over that in length is going to be too long and stick out, so when you're sanding, it's going to hit you in the base of your hand there, and you don't want that. So 20-25mm, that should be an approximate or an appropriate length. From here, when you come through, grab our piece of timber here, push it through, or place it the other way around. I myself am gonna hold it there because it's gonna give me a bit more control when marking this out. You're then gonna need to grab a pencil. And of course, as you can see here, we've got this like this and that. Get your pencil here and draw on the outside of this bolt. Now, it can be a bit harder to see on the Merbau, but make it work. Now, you do want to make this as snug as possible. So you don't want to create too much excess space around it. And that's what it should look like when it's done, is you've got a very nice little piece of Merbau there with the outside edge drawn on. What are we doing next? Well, we're creating a cavity for this to fit in. This needs to fit in there and sit there tight and snug. To do this, it's not overly difficult, but you do want to be cautious to not go the whole way through because you'll weaken your piece and have to remake a bottom piece. And that's not good for anyone, nor is it good for the environment. So come through, got your piece here, and we're going to pull out our chisels again. Now, as you can see, I do have that fell chisel set and they are fantastic. For this, you're going to want a very thin chisel, and I'm going to have a look at maybe the 6mm chisel. It's 6mm wide, and that's going to be our perfect setup for this one, because we're going to be able to come through and set this up. If I had a smaller one, I would go with a smaller one, but 6 is the smallest one I have personally, so we're going to focus with that one. From there, you're going to come through, and we're going to start removing some of that material. So for this, come through, and you're going to want to place the chisel edge just in and give that a bit of a tap. Then you're going to want to turn and keep going. If I had a smaller chisel, I'd much prefer to have a smaller chisel. With this, make sure to get that chisel going straight up and down, then coming through and giving it a light tap. Now, normally you'd hold a mallet like this, but I've got my camera, my second camera right there. So I'm going to go on the side for this one. From there, you can clear it out. Now you've got a couple options. You can obviously always throw it in a vise. And for this, I'm actually going to go through and get my bench hook. So if you don't have a vise, wherever you're learning this or doing this, you can always use that bench hook to come through and use pressure up against. After you've kind of outlined where you're doing, come through and clear that out a bit, making sure to turn this and to set this up however you need to make it work for you. Now this Merbau is reasonably light or reasonably soft, so that I'm able to go through and a lot of the time just twist it out, because especially having drilled out that center part, it's got room for clearance there. What we're doing there is we're just clearing this out to make sure that this is going to fit in, and if it's not going to fit in, we adjust until it does. Now we don't want too much space going on because we don't want it to be loose. We don't ever want it to work loose because ultimately then it won't clamp for us and you'll be remaking one of these. And that's never fun. So I've gone through, I've got it mostly sorted. So it's mostly fitting in there and it's pretty snug. So to set this up, what you can come through and do is to make sure that this is, or to allow yourself to get this into there nice and snugly and the whole way to make sure it's gonna be flat and flush. You're gonna come through and set this here, tighten this up so there's still a little bit of movement. Grab out your trusty hammer this time and just give it a tap in there. Now for me, I'm pretty chuffed with that. As you can see, that worked a charm. And and then bring it through, and I'm pretty content with that. But let's see how it's going to go with our hole, because it means that we may need to take a little bit off this, or may need to go through and make this a little bit deeper. Now, is this going to give me the length that I need? It's coming out significantly farther. Let's grab a wing nut and let's test it. I would say yes. I would say that is plenty. Now, if I did need to go through any further, I would of course go through and force some of this out a bit further, but I do not. So let's keep moving forward.